we're speaking about maverick scholars and people being looked upon as maverick, this is usually a term of negativity to try to ostracize them in some way. So there are a lot of people writing, I would call them aficionados, who have taken up the cause and are publishing books on their own and through different means of publishing at the moment. And this is making a fairly big impression on the internet. So it may turn out that what are called mavericks now and generations to come, hopefully, can at least be a counterweight to some of the scholarship. The scholarship, unfortunately, people in the field of studying these kind of documents, gospels and other materials of that kind, often come from seminaries or rabbinical institutions. And very often where the scrolls, the Dead Sea Scrolls were concerned, these were people who were under authority. So you really couldn't get an objective view or to go beyond a certain point from them. They could go this far and no further, but they couldn't see, for instance, if you said the scrolls are really what Christianity was in Palestine, they couldn't go that far. I'm somewhat of a pessimist. I feel that the authoritative documents are so authoritative in people's minds that even though new points of view come into play, it takes people maybe 30, 40 years of their life to develop these attitudes and points of view, and it's very difficult to pass it on to a new generation. So when young people or a new generation come up, they just start with the same documents that they had in the first place, and the same authoritative points of view hold sway. And I'm not sure if in 2100 or 2200, we won't be looking at the same allegiances that we're seeing now. We're speaking about the Messianic movement in Palestine. I think that I coined that phrase maybe back in the mid-80s, the 1980s, because when we were looking at the Dead Sea Scrolls, people were using the Dead Sea Scrolls to talk about Essenes. Occasionally they spoke about zealots. And this was terminology that was fairly normative, and it meant certain things to people. But when you looked at the scrolls themselves, they were more than that. And the idea of an Essene, as described, for instance, in the Jewish historian Josephus in the 1st century, or his earlier contemporary Philo of Alexandria, also in the earlier 1st century, who spoke about Essenes. When you looked at these people, they were not talking about Essenes vis-a-vis any Messiah situation. But if you look at the Qumran is the word we use to describe Dead Sea Scrolls, because it's an easier jargon, it's where they were discovered. If you look at the Qumran documents, you'll see that they are full of messianic materials. They have all of the so-called messianic prophecies. They even have collections of messianic proof texts, promises, for instance, to the seed of David, and things like that. So things that we've come laterally after Christianity came into play in the Roman Empire and Christian documents took over the Western world view, prophecies that we became familiar with as sort of proof texts you find in these lists in the Dead Sea Scrolls. So I began to call this the literature of the Messianic movement in Palestine. And that's why I use that phrase, not Essene, not Zealot, because I don't think they call themselves Zealots. And we've never seen Essene used anywhere but Josephus and Philo. We don't even have it in the New Testament documents. So what were they calling themselves? And there are many names, but I think the whole literature is the literature of, because of these messianic quotes, the literature of the Messianic movement in Palestine. The key prophecy that we're talking about when we're speaking about the Messianic movement in Palestine is usually the star prophecy. It's from Numbers, I think it's Numbers 24. A star will rise from Jacob, a scepter to rule the world, etc., etc., etc. Often, for instance, in Christian iconography, you see the star over Bethlehem. If you go to the catacombs in Rome, you'll see Balaam, who's the prophet in Numbers, who is supposed to have first uttered this prophecy, pointing at the star in the actual catacombs. So the fundamental one was the star prophecy. Because of this star will rise out of Jacob, a scepter to rule the world. Now this is in Josephus. Josephus says that this was capable of the first century Jewish historian of multiple interpretations, and he, like rabbinic Judaism to follow him, represents, let's say, the Pharisee approach. He said he used the most cynical interpretation. He applied it to the rise of the Roman emperor in Palestine, the Roman emperor that destroyed the Jewish independent state in Palestine, that burned the temple and so on and so forth. He said he's the world ruler that would come out of Palestine. And therefore, he in return got the moniker Flavius Josephus, because the new emperors that came out of Palestine, the Roman generals, Vespasian and Titus and so on, the Arch of Titus in Rome is still extant. These people were called Flavians. So in return for his cynical interpretation and sycophantism, he becomes Flavius Josephus. But Christianity, for instance, has this star prophecy as applying to their picture of Jesus. And in the scrolls, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the star prophecy is referred to in at least 3 extant documents. One we call the Damascus document, one we call the War Scroll, and in this list of Messianic proof texts that I said. That's quite incredible to have 3. And Josephus at one moment in his Jewish war book says that the thing that most moved the Jews to revolt against Rome was the prophecy that a world ruler would come out of Palestine. So in other words, the war against Rome was a Messianic war. So that's why I say that the scrolls are not only the literature of the Messianic movement in Palestine, they're also the literature of the war against Rome. And you do have in this war scroll, it's in around, the scrolls are divided into columns because they're read from right to left and so on in the normal Hebrew way, because they're rolled on a scroll. So around column 11 or so in the war scroll, you have this prophecy, and then they interpret it. And they interpret it in terms of the Messiah, and they also interpret it in terms of the heavenly host coming on the clouds of heaven to rain judgment on all the world. Now, if you look in the New Testament, every time Jesus or John the Baptist or someone like that, in early church literature, James, the brother of Jesus, is questioned, they speak about, and you will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven, meaning with the heavenly host for whatever they're supposed to do, rain judgment on the earth. And so I say that here's the war scroll giving its Palestinian version of these ideas. And then in Christianity later, you have the reformulation as they're presented in the Gospels as we know them.
And would you say that the Messiah that the Jews were waiting for, the Palestinian star prophecy, could be called the Christ?
Well, can this Messiah be called the Christ? The Christ is a very ephemeral Greek terminology that very few people know what it actually meant. Christos in Greek can mean compassion. In some versions, I suppose it can mean anointed one. I've never seen how that actually works out, because this is a very precise Greek transcription. But one thing is sure, the book of Acts, which describes the development of the church in its own somewhat tendentious manner, at least the first 15 chapters, speaks around 10, 11 or so on, that Christians were first called Christians in Paul's church in Antioch in northern Syria somewhere. There's a lot of discussion on which Antioch that is. I don't think we need to get into that here. It's very technical, but the head of the Seleucid Empire, which is where all these Antiochs were, or at least 4 or 5 of them, his father was named Antiochus or Antiochus. And so he named lots of cities after him. So the question is, which one are we talking about? Which Antioch is Paul's Antioch? But in any case, that means in the mid-50s, when this is supposed to be happening in the book of Acts, Christians were first called Christians in Antioch. That means they weren't called Christians in Palestine. That means in the 30s, 40s, or whatever, certainly probably up to, because it would take quite a long time for that terminology then to permeate back into Palestine, if that's an accurate presentation. That means they weren't called Christians in Palestine until quite late, even probably until the war against Rome and thereafter. So what were they called? That's a Greek formulation. So I don't know if Christ is a perfect translation of Messiah, or whether Christians were ever called Christians in Palestine until much later. So we have to ask, what were they called? And I think they were called, well, Messianists, perhaps, but perhaps Ebionites. Ebion is the Hebrew word for poor, and the poor are mentioned in the War Scroll. The Dead Sea Scrolls talk about themselves in terms of the poor. The James community was called the Ebionites, the poor. The letter of James addresses the poor. And so that may have been one of the names. There's one early church historian. His name's called Hippolytus. There's a manuscript that was found attributed to him in Mount Athos in the 19th century that was just recently found. We don't know if it was to him, but he has a version of the Jewish sects there, very much like Josephus, but slightly different than Josephus. And he speaks about there being 4 groups of Essenes, not one as in Josephus, but 4. And 2 of these groups he calls Zealot Essenes and Sicarii Essenes. Now, I think that's more like what the Dead Sea Scrolls were. That the Dead Sea Scrolls exhibit Essene characteristics, Zealot characteristics, and Messianic characteristics. And Sicarii was a word is found in the book of Acts 2. It's the Greek word for assassin or terrorist. And Josephus, who's writing in Greek, likes to call the extreme nationalist, partisan, zealot groups Sicarii, assassins. But they certainly didn't call themselves this. So that's a pejorative, again, being used. And so you have to say, who are the Sicarii? In Josephus, the Sicarii actually are the ones who commit suicide on Masada when the whole revolution against Rome fails. And in the New Testament, you have this odd character who we have recently found a gospel in his name called Judas Iscariot. And people, you just transpose the I and the S and you get Sicarios. And that's the closest thing that we have there to his name. So it's pretty clear to a lot of us that that's a parody of Judas the Zealot, Judas the Sicarii, etc. And then, of course, he's portrayed in the most negative way, except in the new gospel attributed to him, where there seems to be a somewhat reportrayal of him and so on. So I don't know when Christ or Christian came into play. It's very late. It's overseas. It's Greek. If it's a precise translation of something, I don't know. But in Palestine, these are the groups we have: the poor, the Ebionites, the Essenes, the Zealots, the Essene Zealots, the Zealot Essenes, the Sicarii Essenes, and so on and so forth. One last point I'd like to make on that particular subject. Josephus says the Essenes participated in the war against Rome. Now, in his description of Essenes, you wouldn't get any idea, because most people think of Essenes as retiring monastic sort of people. They weren't this, according to the Dead Sea Scrolls. They were very active and not retiring, and they were aggressive and not self-effacing, and so on. Militant, I would say. So he said they didn't mind dying any kind of death. They withstood any kind of torture. In other words, they were the first martyrs, just like early Christianity says Christians were. They were the first martyrs, and they wouldn't they would not take the name, call any man Lord, or eat any forbidden things. Hippolytus says the same thing, except he's speaking about the Zealot Essenes or the Sicarii Essenes. And he says the same thing, that they would withstand any torture, go to their death, any kind of thing like that, but they would not eat things sacrificed to idols rather than for forbidden things. Well, if you look at early Christian literature and you look at the book of Acts again, Acts 15, where the so-called Jerusalem Council is taking place, the final rulings by James are abstain from things sacrificed to idols. Now, that is something James is portrayed as disseminating to the whole of early Christianity from his leadership in Jerusalem. Now you look at Paul, 1 Corinthians 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, he's heaping abuse on those people who abstain from things sacrificed to idols. He knows that eating and not eating, or prohibiting eating things sacrificed to idols, is a very important thing. And therefore he starts arguing all through 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 about this stricture from, obviously, from James, whom he opposes. And he says, oh, an idol is nothing in the world. You know, these people's consciences are weak. So because they have such weak consciences, you know, you're eating such things in front of them might cause them to stumble. I'm paraphrasing here. So when you're around them, don't do that, because you don't want to cause your brother to stumble. But as for me, later on in the same letter, he says, there are no forbidden things. Eat anything in the butcher shops. He also says some of these people in Romans, in the other letter, are so weak that they'll only eat vegetables. So this is how he talks about this. And it shows that things sacrificed to idols and not eating them, which Josephus says, or rather Hippolytus' Josephus says, is what they were really not going to eat, is extremely important and kind of ties all these things together. Well, yes, the word Christ or Christians can refer to the Palestine Messianic movement, but it's a later term that has been used overseas in northern Syria. Acts, the book of Acts, that describes its version of the growth of what it calls the church, says Christians were first called Christians in Antioch in Syria. Now, that is not a revolutionary movement in Antioch in Syria. That's a Pauline church. They would be opposed basically to the Messianic movement in Palestine. They would be transforming it into something quite different, a pacifist, pro-Roman sort of Messianic movement that we're now all familiar with. So it isn't the same as the Messianic movement in Palestine. It's a later reformulation of the Messianic movement in Palestine. So yes, it can certainly originally referred to that, but that's not what it became, because the Pauline community in Antioch is very different from whatever could have been considered the Dead Sea Scrolls, the James community in Jerusalem, or anything like that.
So let's move on to why the Jews rebelled from Rome in 66 CE. Were there statues that were trying to be placed in the temples and they didn't believe in that?
Well, there was a revolt of the Jews ultimately in 66 CE or AD, depending on how you like to describe these dates. And as Josephus, the Jewish historian, puts it in the one revealing portion at the end of his book called The Jewish War, he says the thing that most moved the Jews' revolt against Rome was an obscure prophecy from among their writings that a world ruler would come out of Palestine. Well, we recognize that as what the Christian religion considers its Christ or Christianity founder to be. Josephus himself says in his own cynical way that they were mistaken about this, that it actually applied to the destroyer of the Jewish people in Palestine and the destroyer of the Jewish temple, the future Emperor Vespasian, and his son Titus, who everyone knows from the Arch of Titus in Rome, where is pictured all the prisoners and booty from the War of 66. Now, this war in 66 went on from 66 to 70 AD, and actually the final stages of it are also described in Josephus, in the Masada, which people have heard of, the Masada episode, which is a sort of a plateau or a one of those geographical features you see in Arizona and places, a sort of mesa, yeah, a mesa. Yeah, which is this Masada is really a sort of mesa of the kind you're familiar with in places like Arizona, on which was built a palace, a step palace, but also it had storage bins and things like that. And he pictures the zealots, but the most extreme wing of the zealots, one of the Jewish parties, he considers, Josephus that is, responsible for the war against Rome, the Sicarii. This is where the Sicarii retreat to. Sicarii is a Greek term. It's named after the knife, supposedly, that he says they carried under their vestments to assassinate their opponents. That's Josephus, who is already prejudiced because he's gone over to the Roman side. But that would be like the curved dagger Arabs even wear to this day. They maybe have used these in various ways, but I'm sure they didn't call themselves Sicarii. That's a pejorative. But on this Masada, they're the ones who commit suicide with all their families and children and everyone else, rather than surrender to Rome. So that's the last stage of the war against Rome, 73 AD. So this war against Rome is 66 to 70. The temple is destroyed. There's a lot of discussion who did it, but clearly the Romans did it, burned it in 70 AD, and then it continues out in the Dead Sea area at Masada. But I think there's some numerology here. That 66, if you look at it carefully, is 3.5 years after the death of James in 62. And I feel that the death of, in my work, I have described a sequentiality in these things, that you have these Sicarii or extreme zealots assassinating, collaborating priests. So for instance, the picture in the New Testament, the Gospels, of the high priests and so on, condemning Jesus with the Roman authorities, etc., doesn't show you that the people, the general populace, was against this establishment. It shows, it uses this as a way of blaming the Jews in some way for the death of their savior and so on. And it doesn't give you the picture of unrest and disaffection that existed in the general population. So the sequentiality is the assassination of one of these priests, the son of the priest pictured in the Gospels as taking part in the trial of Jesus. His name is Ananus, his name, and this one was called Jonathan. Then he's assassinated. Then there is a retribution on the Sicarii, probably, I think, the stoning of James, which follows that. Then the fire in Rome, which follows that. And then Nero's using of the fire in Rome, supposedly in Christian history, to incriminate Christians, but which is actually incriminating these Messianic zealot type people who are probably using the fire in Rome to answer the death of people like their leader, righteous people like James. And then this attempt by Nero to exacerbate the situation in Palestine and to force the Jews to revolt against Rome so he could suppress and destroy them. That's the sequentiality I see. So the 3.5 years after the death of James is the year 66, where the lower priesthood stops sacrifice on behalf of the Roman emperor in the temple, which is the signal for the uprising against Rome. And that's a popular uprising across the board, except for establishment collaborationist groups. Collaborationist groups meaning the Herodians, the Herod family put in power in Palestine by the Romans. The Sadducees, meaning the Romanizing and Herodian high priests, not the Dead Sea Scrolls or Jesus type of high priests. James type of high priest, and the Pharisees, who are pictured as ultimately their leader, Rabbi Yochanan.
Mic check, mic check. Give me a Yahoo if I can be heard. Give me a Yahoo if I can be heard, family. It's going down. They already tripping with the wires. That was Professor Robert Eisenman. Y'all need to look him on up. I got a few of his books. You know what I mean? Very, very instrumental in bringing out the Dead Sea Scrolls, the history of the, I like what he said, the first century Messianic movement in Palestine. I like that. And he says the literature of the first century Messianic movement out of Palestine. And then he differentiated between that and what later became known as Paul's movement. You know what I mean? But a lot of people don't want to deal with the fact that there's a separation there. There's a separation there, you dig? So I can be heard. All praises. I bet. Well, we're going to go ahead and throw him down. But y'all check him on out. Let me go ahead and drop the link in the chat one more time for y'all. Let me drop the link in the chat. Hold on 1 second, Bean. See y'all in the building. Shout out to all the haters, y'all jackers and naysayers. We love y'all too. Bless up. All right. Shout out and shalom, peace, love, light, healing, and balance to all my brothers and sisters in the chat. Whether you be friend or foe. Whether you be friend or foe. So yeah, check Robert Eisenman out though. You want to get down into like historically. And I noticed that a lot with our people. We got a hard time sometimes telling the difference between history and literature. You understand? Even though literature can have, you know, sprinkles of, you know what I mean, or certain historical things in them. You understand? But still, literature is still something that's composed and has a certain writing style. And you see what I'm saying? So it's a lot of that coming out during that time too. You see? So you really got to search if you really want to, if you don't want to be a gullible, you know what I mean, Israelite, you got to search. You got to search. And I got to tell you, my faith is even more on fire. You know what I mean? I already was a problem. You did. But look, abundant blessings to y'all in the building. Bless up. All right, we're going to go ahead and get back to the introduction. This is what we're doing. Show y'all. We into the history. Get back into the history. We brought it out last year. But now we're going to bring it back out, but we're going to slow roll it. That way you can soak in everything and meditate on everything, all right? So, let's do it like this. Wow. All right, get her. Let's get her first. Let me know if y'all can see that. This is a part 2. This is part 2. Our last video, we was going over the history, the historicity of the Nazarene Essene literature. All right. Edited and restored with historical documentation by Alan Waters and Rick Van Wy. You know, when we first came out with this last year, everybody thought, oh, you following the white man. And yeah, I remember all that. And the whole thing was, look, deal with us with what's in there. Matter of fact, we so thorough in what it is that we own, we can deal with you over in the Bible. You understand? And this document right here is revolutionary because it tried Israel last year. It's still a problem. I know Israelites that hate this book right here, hate it. But notice it don't even say Alan Waters and Rick Van Wy are the authors. That's how you know how destroyed we are. We're not even using common sense and reasoning anymore. This don't even say written. Does it say written by Alan Waters and Rick Van Wy? So they're not the authors then. See, you got to be careful. Like we out here confusing editors with authors, and we think that we have even a bone in any fight with a real type of scholar in any type of debate when you can't even tell the difference between an author and an editor. You dig? We done got too pompous with the knowledge, man. It's crazy. And we out here following our swords. If you Nick Rose was having some real scholastic debates, you be out here getting washed. Stop it. You don't even know the difference between an author and an editor. And you so blind by what it is, the white man, but then all y'all turn around and still use Strong's Concordances. That's James Strong. That's a white man. Huh? Even when we thought King James was a white man, even when we thought that, we was like, whatever, deal with the information in it. If the information in it, you know what I mean, can't stand and stand on his own merit, then, hey, whatever you think it is, it ain't. All right, so this is what we coming out of. You did. We read 18 slides last video. I encourage y'all to go back to part 1. All right. All right, I'm going to start with the last one that we left off with. All right, and this was right here. Make sure y'all can see that too. I'm over here running my trap. Ain't even checked on y'all. Right. Okay, we good. We good. All right, we good. We good. It is. All right, we all good. All right, everybody can see. Praise to the Most High. My aunt Tillman Judah in the building. Bless her. Man, my brother got a beautiful testimony. You know what I mean? Let us know when you're ready to bring it on out, King. You already know. We got to, hey, look, the nation need to hear that. That's beautiful, man. All praises to the Most High. All right. So this is what we ended off with last video. And we reading the prologue, the historical context, the introduction, the preface. We reading all that in the book that I just showed y'all. Because in there is going into, how this, what we call this Nazarene literature, this Essene literature, if you want to call it that. You know what I mean? Or some of the first century Messianic movement literature coming out of Palestine, how it came into, how it came into being. Now, the crazy part, we got to keep it real. That don't mean that everything you read in the Gospel of the Nazarenes and the Essene Gospel of Peace agree with each other or agree on. You know what I mean? There are differences in those too. And in the Nazarene Acts, there are differences in those too. Clementine homilies, you know what I mean? So we not the ones that act like it ain't differences and contradictions and all that. Because all those say in various areas, some areas, they say different things too. All right. So we're gonna keep it fair. Now watch this. It says the Gospel of the Nazarenes prologue, the historical context. All right, matter of fact, I need to go back to the previous one because I'm finishing the sentence, look like. Let me pull that one up. Let me see. Hold on. Y'all forgive your brother. Must be that 16, because it ain't that one. All right, pull this one. Let me see. All right, let's try this one. Then we're going to do that other one. Yep. Prologue, the historical context. Gospel of the Nazarenes, all right? All right, let's get it. It says the term gospel has a popular definition as the good news, referring specifically to the redemptive quality of the teachings of the Messiah. It should be noted, however, that the term existed long before the Christian era. Y'all hear that? Gospel existed long before the Christian era. In Greek, the word for gospel is evangelion, which means good and joyous tidings. The birthday of Emperor Augustus was referred to as the day of the evangelion. He was also referred to as the savior of the world. talking about Emperor Augustus, Caesar. The Christian gospel vernacular undoubtedly began as a collection of teachings and sayings handed down orally. Absolutely. But that's how anything starts before it's written down. It's oral. All right. It is also very likely that these were dispersed throughout the regions as a result of the Roman invasion, and that to some degree their content suffered variations until they were preserved in written form. Absolutely. Among the most basic information, listen to this, y'all. Among the most basic information that any student of historical and archaeological New Testament research will become aware of is the fact that the writings found in the books of what we know as the authorized New Testament were not fashioned by the apostles themselves. Y'all heard that? Y'all ready to hang brother off the gateway arch behind it? Look, that's nothing I came up with off the top of my own dome. Huh? They all know that the apostles didn't write those. Because a lot of things were written down later and attributed to the apostles. You know what I mean? What do you think pseudepigraphers are? Pseudepigrapher history and all that. You know what I mean? Just the word pseudo in the front of it lets you know. Because in there you got stories like the Testament of Abraham and the 12 pages, the Testament of the 12 patriarchs and the Testament of Solomon and all that. But when you do the history and the research, you see that these things were written down, you know what I mean, around the 2nd and 1st centuries before the Common Era, BC. But these men, the Testament, like the Testament of the 12 patriarchs, Judah, they all lived before King David, historically speaking. So they all lived 2,000 years before the Common Era. So you're talking 1,800 years. So in other words, when you read the Testament of the 12 patriarchs, those aren't their writings. Now, there may be sayings passed down over 1,000 years or 2,000 years or something like that that's attributed to them and then finally get written down. But to think that Judah wrote the Testament of Judah, that's not historically accurate. You feel me? And that's what it's saying about the New Testament. To think Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John actually wrote those, that's not historically accurate. It's not historically accurate. You know what I mean? And he's saying, look, and that's basic information. That's basic. That's what they're saying. That's nothing for anyone to be ashamed of. You understand? So I'm gonna tell you how your brother rock. How I rock is if whatever I'm reading, if I can't apply it right now in real time to affect righteous change right now, I don't deal with it anyway. So no matter what you navigate through, there are jewels to be grabbed and had and applied, wisdom to be gained from it. You understand? Our problem is we have turned a book, any book, into an idol, to the Creator, to the Most High. Nah. Now watch this. It says right here, among the most basic information that any student of historical and archaeological New Testament research will become aware of is the fact that the writings found in the books of what we know as the authorized, in quotations, authorized New Testament were not fashioned by the apostles themselves. Beginning in 325 AD at the behest of Constantine the Great, a Roman council of bishops gathered at the Council of Nicaea, trip off this, y'all, to fashion such a standardized work from the writings available at the time. You see, he has to fashion this work. Him and all the bishops and everybody coming from all over the known world. And they got to do it out of what? The writings that are available at that time, which would be 300 years after the death of Messiah, the historical Messiah, who was living in 1st century Palestine. They're fashioning the New Testament based off the available writings. And even in them, those got to be sifted through and scrutinized. Because if it don't line up with the agenda of Rome, they ain't dealing with it. Christianity was created as a political and a socio-economical tool. Straight up. Psychological tool, yeah. Now look at this. So, but always remember that though. Constantine the Great, a Roman council of bishops gathered at the Council of Nicaea to fashion such a standardized work from the writings available at the time. According to historians, many local gospels were in existence, all springing from the same oral tradition and basic. Hold on. Dang, hold on. Let me finish. Hold on. Before I do that, it's some subtitles down here we got to read. Look at this. It says the work begun at Nicaea. I'm all the way at the bottom, y'all. I'll read that again. The work begun at Nicaea was completed at the Council of Hippo in 393 AD. Write that down. You know what I mean? Write that down. You need to know about this. You know what I mean? Look at all these ecumenical councils that had to be held from 325 AD, y'all, all the way up into the 1960s. You talking about 1,600 years of forming what you had today is this so-called beast of Christianity. Look at this. Beginning in 325 AD at the behest of Constantine the Great, a Roman council of bishops. Hold on, I'm at the bottom of this. The work begun in Nicaea was completed at the Council of Hippo in 393 AD, okay, and ratified at the Council of Carthage in 397. After which Jerome completed the Latin Vulgate in 405 AD. These are all dates and places, and then they gave you Jerome, which is a church historian. Y'all need to write all these dates and places and names down. Do your research, thoroughly look into it. It'll blow your mind what's going on here, man. It'll blow your mind what's really going on. Like, dang, okay. You feel me? Because you want to be aware. The Most High Creator don't want you out here silly and stupid, ignorant of what's going on. Hold on, man. Question that. Try that. Now, look at this. Look at this. More or less our New Testament of the day. Notice what it's saying. After which Jerome completed the Latin Vulgate. And it's saying that the New Testament today, more or less, can basically be called the Latin Vulgate. The Latin Vulgate is basically the New Testament. That's a Jerome's work in 405. More or less, you know, more or less our New Testament of the day. It should also be noted that several gospels, look at this, y'all, were added and or removed during this period. Y'all ready to get honor and humility for that? You mad at us for what? Showing you like, look, hold on, we may have been deceived right here. Watch out. Watch out. They've been adding to and taking away from. But that ain't on honor and humility. That ain't on MALAKIMAC. That ain't on NehemiYAH. That ain't on YAH'KI. That ain't on my WASPy faithers, brothers and sisters. That's historical. If we never said nothing about it, you still got to deal with it. That ain't just an Essene Nazarene thing. Oh, man, that sounds like the Essene Nazarene thing. No, that's historical. Go look and see what happened and at which council what was determined and how what you know is the New Testament today that was agreed upon came into being. We're out here acting like this deal was FedEx to you from the throne in heaven. Look at what had to happen. And you know, all men are up under some inspiration. It's either the Most High or it's the false gods. Just know that, right? Now watch this. It should also be noted that several gospels were added or removed during this period. An example of this is the Shepherd of Hermas. I've read the Shepherd of Hermas. Yeah. Yeah, matter of fact, I got the Shepherd of Hermas. Not just read it, actually have it with me. Yeah, that's in the lost books of the Bible and the forgotten books of Eden. The Shepherd of Hermas, a very, very thorough read. Very thorough read. I actually like it. It's cold, actually. You know what I mean? Straight up, the Shepherd of Hermas, which at Nicaea and later was the final track, not revelation. The Shepherd of Hermas was the revelation. It wasn't Revelations at first that you got in your Bible now, Revelation. Everybody bumping their head trying to decode Revelations and all that. But do you know that Revelation wasn't even in there? It was the Shepherd of Hermas at first. Huh? It was the Shepherd of Hermas at first. That was Revelation that you have, the last book of your Bible. You know what I mean? And I know because I used to brag. I believe every semicolon, every parentheses, every period, from Genesis to Revelation. But you know, historically, if you got to sit down and have a dialogue, boy, you're gonna get handled talking like that. Because it wasn't even Revelations at first. It was the shepherd of Hermas. It was the shepherd of Hermas. Like my YHWH'S saying, read it more than once. Exactly. Read it more than once. Look at this. So regardless if the Nazarene is seen, brothers bringing out, regardless if my faith is brothers and sisters is bringing it out, y'all, that's still history you got to deal with. If you ever got the testicular fortitude of a squirrel to investigate history, you'll see it. You'll see it. And don't worry, I'm working on a documentary right now. We're about to bring the whole thing out. The whole thing out. That way you'll be up under no illusion. You know what I mean? All right, now watch this. It says right here. It says, the shepherd of Hermas, which at Nicaea and later was the final track, not Revelations, which wasn't added until sometime afterward. So Revelation of what you got, that was added. You know how in Revelation it say, don't take away from and don't add to, or you'll be cursed or something like that. Well, how many of y'all knew that Revelation was added to the New Testament? At first, it was the shepherd of Hermas. Revelation was added later. And y'all, all this is being done by men who are in authority, but these men are either under the inspiration of the Most High, the Creator, or they up under the inspiration of the false gods. It's one or the other. It's one or the other. Revelation was added to your New Testament after shepherd of Hermas was removed. You see? Now look at this. It says, I'm going to read again. The shepherd of Hermas, which at Nicaea and later was the final track, not Revelations, which wasn't added until sometime afterward. Anyone doubting this statement should check Codex Sinaiticus. Y'all go get that. Codex Sinaiticus from the early 4th century, our oldest existing New Testament text. What's good? Try the spirit, right? Huh? You just got the name of the oldest existing New Testament. Go look at it. Go look at it. See, you need to know that because a naysayer run up on you. You run around talking about, I believe every word. And, huh? Man, you don't even know the game is being played. You don't even know, look, you don't even know how the false deities or gods are playing mankind like puppets. That's what's happening. Oh, y'all getting some understanding? Give me a 4 up in the chat. Bless up. Let's work. Let's work. Game of Visions. I didn't know that. I'm blown away. Said the boy living feeling good. My Lord, SMH, know me. Hey, it's all good, man. Blessings and peace, my brother. Hey, look, it's all good, y'all. All right. So look, you know what? Just do your research. Look at it. If I don't bring it, look. This is how truth works. If I refuse to speak truth, you know how the Most High works. He just passes it to the next brother and sister that's willing to do it. You don't want to do it? Watch out. Take that back from you and get it to somebody else. Nah, Jack. Nah, you did. All right, now let's go back up. All right, we got foes in the chat. Okay. I say, nah, hurting them 100. hey, look. Y'all got 40 Cal P in the building. Hey, we got my brother Cal P gonna be on Honor and Humility, gonna be right here on the platform, y'all. Next Friday, him and the brother Abinadab Ben Yehuda, they gonna swing swords. You know what I mean? They gonna swing swords. The topic is the authorization of the Torah, I believe it is, versus the authorship of the Torah versus authorship of the OWASP. So it should be a good dialogue and sword session. You know what I mean? So y'all make sure y'all go check our brothers out, man, and get it done. All right, so let's go on back. I owe this New Testament, so if anybody got a problem with it, Your oldest existing agreed upon New Testament is Codex Sinaiticus, the 4th century. Oh, wait. Oh, wait. Shalom, Cal P. Peace to you too. All right, now watch this. All right, let's go back up. It says right here. According to historians, many local gospels were in existence, all springing from the same oral tradition and basic. Hold on. Basic. Hold on. Let me see if that's the right one. The next one. No, that ain't the next. Hold on. Let me go find the next one for y'all. Please forgive me. I got it right over here. It's right here. Surprised it ain't down there. That's right here. That ain't it either. Thought I had that up here. That's 17, and the other one's 16. 15 say. No, that ain't it. All right, well, look. I must have missed that one, but we're going to keep rolling. All right. Man, I thought I had that up here. That's crazy. Which one is this? I hope that ain't it either. No. I'm just making sure I ain't got this already pulled up finally. Hold on one second. We about to rock. Don't worry about it. Oh, here it is. No, I wasn't tripping, man. All right. Basic principles, okay? By the time prologue, the Gospel of the Nazarene's prologue, historical context. By the time the council was gathered to correct and homogenize them for the primarily Greco-Roman audience. Look at this. So we're saying at the existence, or by the time the Council of Nicaea came into being, existing at that time, were many gospels floating around that had to do with the basic principles, that had the same basic principles. So it says by the time the Council of Nicaea, or by the time the council was gathered to what? To correct. Knows what it says. To correct and homogenize them. So whatever was around at the time, they gathered it to edit it and revise it, to homogenize it and correct it. Why? Because guess what, y'all? It has to line up with the agenda of whoever is ruling. Why would they agree upon and put out a text that would be against their sovereignty? They wouldn't do that. Don't make sense. Stop that. By the time the council was gathered to correct and homogenize, and a lot of us know that, you know, Christianity is a blending of pagan elements and all that, but we never question the literature that the pagans had their hands on to give to you. All right, we can agree and admit that, okay, yeah, it's pagan elements in Christianity. We all the Hebrews know that. But then we go, you know, we get real airhead and dumb or numbskullish when somebody asks you, well, what about the literature the same pagans, you understand, had their hands on? Like, what literature you talking about? I'm talking about the New Testament. The agreed upon New Testament. Even if you're saying people gathered them together and translated them, and there wasn't no mistakes, man still had his hand on it. You know what I mean? And the man that had his hand on it wasn't no Israelite that was following Torah customs and all that. So how do we address the pagan elements in Christianity, but not the literature that was produced by the pagans who gave you the pagan elements? Not saying the scriptures don't go back, but I'm saying we can't act like that those in authority weren't correcting and editing and redacting and trying to homogenize whatever they're going to agree on, because whatever they agree on got to agree with Rome. It got to agree with their sovereignty and power. Look at this. By the time the council was gathered to correct and homogenize them for the primarily Greco-Roman audience of the time, the audience was Greco-Roman. You talking about it in 325. You see that? You see that? The audience was Greco-Roman of the time. Though their efforts were successful in producing a somewhat cohesive, their efforts were successful. The New Testament is still here. Though their efforts were successful in producing a somewhat cohesive, though doctrinally inaccurate work, many debates have arisen concerning the variations found in the full authorized gospels. Exactly. Why it got to be a debate? You know why? Because they all don't agree. That's why debates. The only reason a debate got to happen is because there's a disagreement. And why are we debating the information in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John if it all harmonizes? Think about it. Think about it. You know what I mean? Why would people get together? True about this. And there's many debates, Bible on Bible. Think about it like that. Well, if the Bible harmonized, there couldn't be a debate. There would never be a brother that got the Bible in his hand and a brother that got the Bible in the other hand debating topics if the Bible was harmonized. You won't see it. The fact that there is a debate between two Bible thumpers proves the Bible is conflicting and contradictory. Flat out. Now watch this. It is no wonder that theologians have been unable to satisfactorily explain the source of such variations, using only the authorized information. If, however, one searches history beyond popular acceptance and tradition, and that's what all you brothers and sisters are doing. You're searching history beyond popular acceptance and tradition. Much heretofore hidden information resurfaces. That's right. So if you got the testicular fortitude of a squirrel, and you're a curious spirit like myself, I'm curious. I'm always reading and searching stuff. It's just me. It's just how I am. You know what I mean? It says, if however one searches history beyond popular acceptance and tradition, much heretofore hidden information resurfaces. Exactly. You just got to know where to look. It's all there. You just got to know where to look. The following quotes may serve to enlighten the reader's understanding concerning these variations and paradoxes and provide insights into their background and origins. Through this information, the astute reader may also begin to glimpse a historical alternative to the commonly accepted dogma taught today as the gospel. Yeah, you ain't going to be, I'm going to tell you like this. You're not going to be able to start researching this stuff and looking into it and go back to your regular 9 to 5 or go back to your regular scheduled programming dealing with your, like how you view, you know what I mean, and how you get down and worship the Most High. Impossible. You can't take this in and go back and be a robot. Impossible. And that's why this Nazarene Essene literature is very, very much of a threat to mainstream Hebrew Israelite isms. You know what I mean? The OSB is too. Just got to keep it real with you. It is. You dig? That's why everybody mad, but won't nobody catch no fade. Like for real, like why everybody mad? But it's a threat to, you understand, the setup of the false gods. You dig? Now watch this. The main sources from which these quotes arise are available to all who will search through the countless volumes of reference material on the text referred to by past and present historians as an original Aramaic Matthew. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Yeah, but see, that's what the gospel of the Nazarenes is. You know, it comes that the Aramaic Matthew is the parent source. Yeah, and that Matthew does not line up with the Matthew in your Bible at all. at all. And all the historians know that's the oldest gospel out. You understand? All of them know it. There is no doubt that further information will be forthcoming when access to more material becomes available. This particular gospel has been mentioned and quoted from numerous times by many of the early church historians. These references have contributed greatly to our understanding of Nazarene traditions in first century Palestine. Y'all hear this? This is what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with 20 centuries, 19 to 20 centuries ago. 19 to 20 centuries ago. Now look at this. It says right here. This Aramaic Matthew has been called by a number of varying titles. Gospel of the Hebrews, Gospel of the Nazarenes. So the Aramaic Matthew, that's another name. Gospel of the Nazarenes is just another name of that. Gospel of the Ebionites. And most recently, though less frequently, Gospel of the Holy 12. All right. The enlightening yet sobering evidence that follows establishes the fact that a great portion of the text of this Gospel of the Nazarenes is identical. Hold on. Let's read it again. The enlightening yet sobering evidence that follows establishes the fact that a great portion of the text of this Gospel of the Nazarenes is identical with a scroll purportedly preserved and, hold on, I got you. And hold on. I got them all up right here. Preserved and, remember that. All right, here we go. Ah, dang, that ain't it. That ain't it either. What my other one at, man? Y'all tripping. All right, here you go. I'm gonna say, stop it. Stop it. All right, here we go, y'all. Okay, it says right here. It says preserved and hidden from corruptors by the Mount Carmel branch of the Essenes. Carmelites. Y'all see that? Say this gospel here was hidden and preserved from corruptors by the Mount Carmel branch of the Essenes. In Tibet, somewhere in the middle to late first century. Yeah. Trip off this. And establishes that this text is considerably older than the New Testament. Absolutely. This includes not only the finished New Testament, but also any other canonically accepted books within. And with the possible rare exception of the Gnostic Gospel of Thomas, discovered in the Nag Hammadi, that's a good one. Nag Hammadi materials found in Egypt. This includes any archaeological fragments thereof as well. This gospel was rediscovered several times centuries later, most recently in the mid to late 19th century. As mentioned earlier, this gospel has been referred to under a number of different titles, in all likelihood because of regional or secular association. This account of Yahshua's life and others of strikingly similarity are attested to having been in existence during the lifetimes of the following church father historians. Write these cats down, because what we read and go back to the first century, that's what this is basically saying. And if you can go and search history and find quotes from these church fathers who were living in the first century, second century, third century, fourth century, fifth century, and they talking about the Nazarenes and the Essenes, then what is we even talking about? The following church father historians: Papias, Hegesippus, both those were in the first century. All right, Irenaeus, Clement, Origen, Basil, Epiphanius, Eusebius, and St. Jerome, to mention but a few. In latter years, it is said that St. Francis of Assisi kept it by his bedside and read passages before and after his morning meditations, and just before retiring at night. Judging from the reports of St. Francis' everyday life, This will not be hard to believe. Anyone who reads both this gospel and any account of the life of St. Francis will no doubt comprehend the full purport of this statement. Let's go to the next slide. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah, so this right here comes out and makes his boast and says that it's much older than your agreed upon New Testament. All right. Y'all get some understanding so far? Give me a 5 up in the chat. Y'all know we ain't trying to lose nobody. Blessed up. Let's get into the historical references. Let's get into the historical references. All right. Yeah, they thought we wasn't studied up when we first came outside. I'm like, look, y'all clip ain't long enough. And look, we 79 Nazarene editions later, and we still dropping. And all our enemies are quiet on the set. Nobody is taking any challenge. Nobody is taking any debate. A whole year later, you dig this continual onslaught. Nazarene edition this. Now, and look, I know they subscribe. They get the notification. I ain't stopped yet. We ain't going to stop. Ain't going to stop. It's all about bringing our people back to the Creator. That's what it's about, the Most High. All right, we giving 5s in the chat. All right, the historical references. So you mean to tell me this is referred to in history? Now look at this. The important historical quotes and other elements that provide the documentation given by early church father historians regarding this gospel by whatever name are listed below, though it should be noted that they are not necessarily in chronological order. Epiphanius, I got his work too. All right. Epiphanius wrote concerning the beginning of this gospel after a number of other contemporary church fathers complained that the Jerusalem community, i.e. the Nazarenes and Ebionites, had omitted the Davidic genealogies of Yahshua and started theirs with John the Baptist, among other things. He, however, names it Gospel of the Hebrews or simply the Hebrew Gospel. Now look at this. YAH'KI in the building. Bless up. What's the word? KC in the building. Bless up. Seraphina, beloved sister, bless up. NehemiYAH, my Barak. I see y'all. Bless up. Joyful Yah in the building. Shalom. Shalom. Bless up. Joseph Evans, my beloved brother. Bless up. Bezel the Israelite. A-Town in the building. That's right. That's right. Jason Page. Shalom to you. Game of Vid. Shalom to everybody in the chat. Nah, we ain't run out of gas. That's the problem, Key. They dealing with gas. They dealing with physical. You did. Our energy come from the highest source. We good. You know, endless energy. We ain't even got a gas back up. Yah Ray, Yah Dread, Nazir, my beloved Nazarene brother out of Cali. Bless her. So this right here, Epiphanius, y'all lived during the 4th century. And the fact that he's quoting out his mouth about the Nazarenes and Ebionites and the problem that he has with our gospel because our gospel didn't start with the lineage of who they call Yahshua or who they call Jesus. Our gospel started off different. See what I'm saying? So in the 5th century, this church historian off his mouth is admitting not only that there are Nazarenes on the set, you dig, but that we have our own records and he's familiar with them. Dang. And look, and it's true because I got his records. I got his writings upstairs. I got his writings. I'm about to bring it all back out. We about to bring it all out. We're going to slow roll it. Put it right in everybody's face. All right. In the Hebrew gospel, that is in general used among them, which is called according to Matthew and the beginning of their gospel runs. And it came to pass in the days of Herod, the king of Judea, that there came one John the Baptist. He goes on to say, it was said of him that he was of the lineage of Aaron the priest, the son of Zachariah and Elizabeth. Epiphanius, all right? And that's his writing he did against heresies. All right, 30:13-12. Right? So he's actually not just familiar, he's quoting what's in our record. Look at that. Now, if the gospel of Nazarenes ain't authentic, if the Nazarene Essene literature ain't historical or authentic, then why man 1600 years ago mentioning it, bringing it up, bringing us up, bringing the name of it up, and going into it and saying this the problem I have with it because it admits the Davidic lineage of Yahshua or Jesus. So he's even not just familiar, he's quoting what's in there. You see that? If this ain't a historical thing, y'all, it ain't on nobody's mouth 1600 years ago. That's my point. All right? Now watch this. Go to the next slide. Got you. Let's work. We just here to work a little taste. We just here to work a little taste. That's it. You know, get on out the way. We just here to make you think a little taste. Trust me, we don't mean harm. All right? Now watch this. Named Zacharias of the course of Abia, and whose wife Elizabeth was of the daughters of Aaron. The similarity here leaves little room for doubt that the opening verse of both Epiphanius, Hebrew gospel, according to Matthew, and the gospel of the Nazarenes are born of one and the same source. Y'all see? Look, if it ain't ancient, if it ain't historical, nobody 1600 years ago talking about it. All right? St. Jerome is quoted here in what he calls, as do we, albeit by a different spelling, the gospel of the Nazarenes. Now here goes St. Jerome, who did the Latin Vulgate. Basically your New Testament today. The Latin Vulgate was translated in 410 of the Common Era. All right, so we talking about 1600 years ago. And look what St. Jerome talking about. The gospel of the Nazarenes. Wow. But no, I thought Rick Van Wy and Alan Waters wrote this. You see? The gospel of the Nazarenes, out of Egypt have I called my son, for he shall be called the Nazarene. Both phrases follow placed in their full context as found in two verses of the gospel of the Nazarenes quoted verbatim. But when Herod was dead, behold, Gabriel appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt, saying, arise and take the young child and his mother and return to the land of Israel, for they are dead which sought the young child's life. And the Lord said, out of Egypt have I called my son, whom shall be called the Nazarene. And he rose and took the young child and his mother and came to the land of Israel. And they came and dwelt in the place called Nazareth, where dwelled Nazarites and Essenes. And he was called the what? The Nazarene. Yeah, that's Gospel of the Nazarene, chapter 5, verse 20 and 21. Saying Nazareth dwelt Essenes and Nazarites. All right, Nazarite and Essene together, you get Nazarene, Nazir, Essene, Nazarene. Y'all see that? Look at that. But look, y'all, that's quoted. Epiphanius and Jerome and them are quoting the gospel of the Nazarenes that most of y'all have. My only point being, if it ain't historical, they ain't talking about it. And y'all, I researched all this before I even came outside and started teaching on the Nazarene and Essene literature last year. That's why I'm telling everybody, like, look, y'all clip ain't long enough. You ain't researched it deep enough. You ain't researched it deep enough to come against it. You just don't like the fact that it challenges your mainstream view on the Bible. All right? It's just the truth. All right, now watch this. It says right here, the next reference, again, originates from Epiphanius in his quote regarding the story of John the Baptist. Now look at this. It says, and it came to pass that John was baptizing, and there went out to him Pharisees and were baptized in all Jerusalem. And John had a garment of camel's hair and a leathern girdle about his loins. Now watch this. Hold on for a second. It get real in the building. It ain't got real. Here we go. All right. It says right here, and his food, as it said, was wild honey, and the taste of which was manna, as a cake dipped in oil. Now notice that right there. See, the whole deal with John the Baptist eating grasshoppers or eating locusts and all that, See, from the Nazarene and the Essene literature, that's different. And our literature is actually older than your agreed upon New Testament. All right? It's just what it is. It's just what it is. Until you can prove it otherwise, it stands. All right? The literature ain't going nowhere. It stands. It must be noted here that Epiphanius is an error regarding John's so-called leathern girdle. Given their strict adherence to the law, it is unlikely that any Essene, Ebionite, or Nazarene would be wearing a leather garment. Camel's hair or linen were the more common materials used, as noted in the following passage from the Gospel of the Nazarenes. Look at this. And it came to pass that John was baptizing, and there went out to him Pharisees and others from Jerusalem and all Judea and all the region around about Jordan. And the same John had his raiment of camel's hair and a girdle of the same about his loins. And his meat was the fruit of the locust tree. It wasn't grasshoppers. You know what I mean? It wasn't grasshoppers. It was fruit actually from the locust tree. Hey, a lot of us believe John the Baptist was chewing on grasshoppers. Nah, he wasn't chewing on bugs or locusts or grass. It was fruit from the locust tree. Now look at this. It says, and his meat was the fruit of the locust tree, wild honey and honey-soaked carob cakes dipped in oil, the taste of which was that of manna. That's, trip off this. That right there is the Gospel of the Nazarene, chapter 7, verse 4. You see that? Now look at this. Continuing with Epiphanius, this time regarding the baptism of Jesus by John. And after much has been recorded, it proceeds, when the people were baptized, Yeshua also came and was baptized by Yohanan. And as he came up from the water, the heavens were opened, and he saw the Holy Spirit in the form of a dove that descended and entered into him. And a voice sounded from heaven that said, Thou art my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. And again, I have this day begotten thee. And immediately light shone about the place. When John saw this, it saith, he saith unto him, Who art thou, Lord? And again, a voice from heaven rang out to him, This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. And then it saith, John fell down before him and saith, I beseech thee, Lord. Okay, hold on. Hold on, y'all. All right. It says, I beseech thee, Lord, baptize thou me. Showing you, and the Lord he's speaking, it ain't it's the Messiah. You understand? So look at this. But he prevented him and said, Suffer it, for thus it is fitting that everything should be fulfilled. So this is Epiphanius again, y'all, quoting in his book out of the Gospel of the Nazarenes. Returning now to St. Jerome, who quotes a slightly altered and abbreviated version of what is obviously the same episode. According to the gospel written in the Hebrew speech, which the Nazarenes read, this is what Jerome talking about 1,600 years ago, that the Nazarenes read. We had our own gospel. We didn't agree with the agreed upon authorized New Testament that everybody toting around today. That don't mean you can't get jewels and nuggets out of it that you can apply today, of course. But I'm talking about historically speaking, the original followers of Messiah didn't rock with what Rome was doing. All right, we in the historical line of Yah. We in the historical context or the prologue of the Gospel of the Nazarenes. And we just going through the historical references and the context and all that, and the preface. All right, so this right here is from Jerome. According to the gospel written in the Hebrew speech, which the Nazarenes read, the whole font of the Holy Spirit shall descend upon him. And it came to pass when the Lord was come up out of the water, and the whole font of the Holy Spirit descended upon him and rested on him, and said unto him, My son, in all the prophets was I waiting for thee, that thou should come, and I might rest in thee. For thou art my rest. Thou art my first begotten son that reigns forever. That's Jerome quoting from the Gospel of the Nazarenes, right? Now watch this. In the Gospel of the Nazarenes, parts of both quotes are present, and it was in the midst of the summer, the 10th month, when the people were being baptized. Then came Yeshua from Galilee to Jordan unto John to be baptized of him. But John forbade him, saying, it is I who need to be baptized with thee. And again, I beseech thee, baptize thou me. And Yahshua answered, saying, allow it to be so now, for thus it becomes us that everything should be fulfilled. Then he baptized him. And Yahshua, when he was baptized, went up straightway out of the water, and the heavens were opened to him, and a bright cloud stood over him. And from behind the cloud, 12 rays of light. So what's being shown is that the gospel of the Nazarenes and what's in it was not only known about, but was being quoted by these so-called church fathers. All right. And there, in the form of a dove, the Holy Spirit descended and first rested upon him, and then entered into him and said, this is my beloved son, in whom I am well pleased. This day have I begotten thee. And all the prophets was I waiting for thee, that thou should come and I might rest in thee. Thou art my rest. Thou art my first begotten son that reigns forever. That's chapter 8, 1-2. The significance of chapter 8 in the gospel of the Nazarene cannot be overstated. To say that the nature of Yahshua godliness has been a greatly debated issue would be an understatement. Absolutely. Absolutely. You understand? Because true about this, y'all, that's been debated for 2,000 years. If Yahshua is God or not. Or if he's the creator, should I say. Huh? Now watch this. Was he the Godhead incarnate, as orthodoxy would have the faithful believe? Good question. Or was he indeed an extraordinary mortal soul who had achieved a quantum leap of his human, God-man potential? Good question. This version of the baptizing of Yahshua by John, referring to him as the first begotten rather than the only begotten, provides historical proof that there was at least one school of thought strongly opposed to what ultimately became official church doctrine on the matter. Y'all heard that? Look at this. And that's been a debate for a long time. You understand? They've been debating about the, if the Messiah is the Most High, or if he's God, or was he man, right? So was he the Godhead incarnate, as orthodoxy would have the faithful believe, or was he indeed an extraordinary mortal soul? And there's nothing wrong with believing that. An extraordinary mortal soul who had achieved a quantum leap of his human potential. This version of the baptizing of the Messiah by John, referring to him as the first begotten rather than the only begotten, provides historical proof that there was at least one school of thought strongly opposed to what ultimately became official church doctrine on the matter, right? The only begotten son. All right, if y'all understand that so far, give me a 7 up in the chat. All right. The Nazarene and the Essene brothers and them didn't look at that. That became something that was developed later on. The only begotten son. Because first begotten means there's more than one. Means that what? The Most High has many sons and daughters. First don't mean last. All right. Now watch this. Further research reveals that this idea was one of the first and ultimately most tragic departures from traditional Nazarene thought. Do y'all hear this? Do y'all hear this? Further research reveals that this idea of only begotten versus first begotten, this idea was one of the first and ultimately most tragic departures from traditional Nazarene thought, as espoused by Yahshua's brother Yaakov, James, by the church promulgated by Saul of Tarsus, later known as Paul. See, a lot of people don't know Paul when he did his own thing. He didn't agree with what James the Just and the apostles were doing, that the Messiah set up. He didn't agree with that. He didn't agree with that. You got to ask yourself, what makes more sense? Who knew Messiah more? Who would have his doctrine? His brother, his biological brother who knew him his whole life? Who knew him in the flesh and after the flesh? The disciples who rocked with him for as long as they rocked with him, knew him in the flesh and after the flesh, according to the biblical literature or narrative. or a man who never met him. To me, it just makes sense that his brother and them and those who were his students that were in his school, who received the mysteries and understandings and the breakdown of the heavenly kingdom, it makes sense that they would have the message more than somebody who didn't. And that's what this is saying. And that's what this is saying right here. All right. Further research reveals that this idea was one of the first and ultimately most tragic departures from traditional Nazarene thought. All right. As espoused by Yahshua's brother Yaakov, by the church, promulgated by Saul of Tarsus, later known as Paul. By the reference to Yahshua as the first begotten, we are led to believe that there may be a second begotten, a third begotten, and so on. Following further through the implications of these references, we may glimpse into the nature of Nazarene beliefs on the matter, i.e., that Yahshua, the human, received the fullness of the Creator consciousness when baptized with the Great Spirit at the river Jordan by John. In this manner, because he had devoutly prepared and nurtured this state within his soul throughout his experiences, known in Nazaritic terms as the way. Yahshua was augmented to fulfill the, Yahshua was augmented, hold on, he was augmented to fulfill, he was augmented, trip off this, to fulfill divine potential of humanity. On this rock lies the basis of what has been in the past an unbridgeable gulf between true Nazarene, sometimes erroneously designated as Gnostic belief, and what ultimately became New Testament Christianity. So we're going back to the oldest understanding of Messiah. And I'm going to hit you with some. His teachings ain't just in the Bible, as we've been finding out. All right. Look at this. On this rock lies the basis of what has been in the past an unabridgeable gulf, meaning you can't even connect this because it's separate between true Nazarene belief. Sometimes they call us Gnostics. Nah, that ain't what it is. Nazarene belief. And what ultimately became New Testament Christianity. Yeah, there's a difference. How many of y'all knew it was a difference between Nazarene belief and New Testament Christianity? I mean, if you didn't know, if you've been paying attention since the last year, you know now. Because majority of the Israelites don't like what it is that we bring up. But none of them will accept any challenge. Because what we bring out challenges you. Yeah. Look at this. The most important aspect of this point cannot go unmentioned. The history of the two main Essene subsects, Nazarenes and Ebionites, records that they believed a great spirit or a Holy Spirit. Great Spirit entered Yahshua officially upon his baptism by YAH'KI in the Jordan and not at conception. B, as the later Gnostics contended, the term first begotten as opposed to only begotten links him with the reincarnation of Adam as a mortal. I don't believe in reincarnation. You understand? But, take it how you will, all right? Striving to an achievable initiate perfection, which was reached at his baptism by John rather than an immortal being, i.e. God's or the unbegotten's only begotten made flesh. With this information in mind, it becomes more difficult for a Paulianic-based approach to explain this difference in nomenclature away, especially in light of the fact that a significant number of important church fathers through the 4th century support the fact that the ringleaders behind these so-called heretical Hebrew groups that held these beliefs were called Nazarenes. See, we challenge the text. We challenge the belief. We challenge the belief. Because everybody know, even the church fathers, that what you got going on that ain't the Messiah in fullness. It ain't. You understand? It ain't. And if we ain't, if we ain't the static attic Israelites that was back then, if we ain't of the same sect of the static attic Israelites that was raising so much hell that all the church historians and church fathers had to write about us and deem us and condemn us as heretical. If we ain't the same ones, then who is? Because the same, fast forward, 1,600 years later, all the Israelites have deemed us as heretical. Them Nazarene brothers. Isn't that what they call Yahshua and his closest followers? Yeah, Nazarenes. The next quote is from the earliest of this group of church fathers, Papias. Now look at this, y'all. Papias' life is from 60 AD to 140 AD. So he's first century. He's first century. The next quote is from the earliest of this group of church fathers, Papias, who was first bishop of Hierapolis. Papias, who claimed to have been a disciple of John. Yeah. John the Apostle. In his youth, in quoting from this original Aramaic scroll, begins to set the tone for that which is unmistakably Nazarene philosophy. Look at this. Yeah. So we about to go hear a quote from Papias, a church historian, first bishop of Hierapolis, who lived during the 1st and 2nd centuries. Watch this. See, it got to be Nazarene thought, right? Watch this. That's work. We working today. We just here to work. Here to work. Here to make you think. That's it. Whatever you believe should be able to be scrutinized and tested. Because trip off this, y'all, truth is absolute. It's going to stand on its own merit anyway. It's going to stand on its own merit anyway. You understand? Now watch this. A grain of wheat will produce 10,000 heads. And every head will have 10,000 grains. And every grain will produce 10 pounds of fine, clean flour. And other seed, fruits, and grass will produce in corresponding proportions. And all the animals will use those foods that are products of the soil. And all animals will use those foods that are products of the soil and become in turn peaceable and in harmony with one another and with man. That's where the Most High, the Creator's, his kingdom on earth, it ain't gonna be no bloodshed. And, you know what I mean? Establishing the Most High's kingdom on earth. You know what I mean? That's why it's good, brothers and sisters, getting out of these cities and getting into the countryside and all that. And you did, because that's how you start to establish the Most High's kingdom on earth. You did colonies. You understand? And trip off it, peaceful colonies. There ain't no bloodshed allowed there. None of that. Now look at this. The previous quote from that which Papias calls Hebrew or Aramaic Matthew is echoed verbatim in the Gospel of the Nazarenes, chapter 14, verse 7 through 8. Look at this, y'all. So the fact that Papias, who lived during the 1st and 2nd century, in his writings is quoting what's in the Gospel of the Nazarenes that you have. And he lived during the 1st and 2nd centuries, y'all. You got to call a spade a spade. Who around here talking about we ain't proven we authentic and historical? Who? Why you think ain't nobody took no type of debate? Why you think everybody running their mouth and smelling their own breath? Because, y'all, we ain't just got this. We went and got everything. We went and got all the church fathers. We highlighted everything, thoroughly studied, and then brought it outside. Look at this. And for your living, behold, the fields yielding their increase, and the fruit-bearing trees and the herbs. What more do you need than these which the honest work of your hands will not give to you? A grain of wheat will produce 10,000 heads, and every head will have 10,000 grains, and every grain will produce 10 pounds of fine, clean flour. And other seeds, fruits, and grass will produce in corresponding proportion. And all the animals will use those foods that are products of the soil and become in turn peaceable and in harmony with one another and with man. Woe to the crafty who hurt or abuse the creatures of the earth. Woe to the hunters, for they shall be hunted. Look at that. That's Gospel of the Nazarene, chapter 14, verse 7 and 8. And you got a church historian, first bishop of Hierapolis, quoting this verbatim. You can't say we ain't did our research. What is you talking about? What is you talking about? We been outside with this. We been like, what's up? Nobody got no answer for this. You can't debate history. That's in y'all own records. Origen, another of the most respected early church fathers, quotes in his commentary on Matthew. Look at this. It says, the other of the two rich men said to him, Master, what good thing must I do that I may live? He said to him, Man, fulfill the law and the prophets. He answered him, that have I done. He said to him, Go and sell all that thou possessest. Hold on. Go and sell all that thou possessest, right? Look at this. Go and sell all that thou possessest. Distribute it among the poor, and then come and follow me. But the rich man then began to scratch his head. And it, the saying, pleased him not. And the master, Yahshua, said to him, How can you say, I have fulfilled the law and the prophets? For it stands written in the law, love your neighbor as yourself. And behold, many of your brethren, sons of Abraham, are be grim with dirt and die of hunger. And your house is full of many good things, and nothing at all comes forth from it to them. And he turned and said to Shimon, his disciple, who was sitting by him, Shimon, son of Jonah, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of heaven. So he's like, look, you got all, look, you able to help the poor. You able to perform righteousness and works done under others on a massive level. You able to perform righteous acts on a massive level, and you ain't even did that. And how you fulfill the law and the prophets when it says love your neighbors yourself, and many of your brethren out here bad. How? And you got it. Look at this. This text is repeated nearly word for word, chapter 14, verse 11 through 13, the gospel of the Nazarenes. The next to shed light on the evidence is Eusebius. Write down Eusebius. You need to know about him. A highly respected church father, historian of the Nicene era, who wrote the most complete church history of his time. He is quoted here from his work, Theophania. Y'all, when you see a V, that's me writing. That's a book. Go on Amazon and make sure you put it in your cart. All right. I'm giving you everything, the research that we got. I'm giving it to you. Go look at it. Go look at it. Tell me what you find out. We can come back and build more on it. You feel me? Now watch this. He himself taught the reason for the separation of souls, as we have found somewhere in the gospel, that is spread abroad among the Jews in Hebrew tongue. He himself taught the reason for the separation of souls, as we have found somewhere in the gospel, that is spread abroad among the Yahudim in the Hebrew tongue, in which it is said, I choose for myself the most worthy. The most worthy are those whom my Father in heaven has given me. Jerome, likewise, in his commentary on Matthew, says the Hebrew gospel here reads as follows. If ye be in my bosom and do not the will of my Father in heaven, I will cast you out of my bosom. So the fact Jerome is quoting, or he has a commentary on this 1,600 years ago, your whole argument that is not historical, you did, won't hold up in court. Order in the court. Order in the court. All right, watch this. Look at this. In the Gospel of the Nazarenes, parts of both quotes are found. Hold on. Oh, yep, right here. In the Gospel of the Nazarenes, parts of both quotes are found in the chapter 18:1. I choose for myself the most worthy of those whom the all-parent has given me. Therefore, if you be in my bosom and do not the will of the Creator, which is the law, being self-condemned, you shall be cast out. Returning now to Epiphanius. I am come to do away with sacrifices. And if you cease not from sacrificing, the wrath of the Most High will not cease from you. Epiphanius against heresies, 30, semicolon 16, comma 4F. And if you got Epiphanius, you can go underline it. I got him upstairs, underlined and everything. And he's quoting when the Messiah said, all that bloody sacrifice and all that chewing on animals, they ain't of the Creator. They ain't of the Most High. They ain't of the Most High, chewing on the dead flesh of animals. Now look at this. In chapter 21, verse 8, the following passage is quoted in its entirety from the Gospel of the Nazarenes. He also said, I am come to do away with sacrifices and feast of blood. And if you cease not from sacrificing and eating of flesh and blood, the wrath of the Most High shall not cease from you, even as it came to your fathers in the wilderness who lusted for flesh, even as it came to your fathers in the wilderness, who lusted for flesh, and they ate to their content and were filled with rottenness, and the plagues consumed them. Like the earlier quote concerning John's baptizing of Yahshua, the historical evidence and purport and the theological ramifications thereof are diametrically opposed to the latter organized church in general. Diametrically opposed to the later organized church in general, and to its modern fundamentalist affiliates in particular. The Nazarenes would obviously oppose with great zeal any belief system that will propagate in any shape or form the vicarious blood sacrificial atonement of the innocent. Yeah. Y'all see this? The Nazarenes would obviously oppose with great zeal any belief system that will propagate in any shape or form the vicarious blood sacrificial atonement of the innocent. Wow. Of the innocent, right? Nazarenes don't teach that. Of the innocent. Whether they be what? Human or animal. To pay for the sins of the guilty. Yeah. Every tub got to sit on his own bottom, Jack. That's just what it is. Every tub got to sit on his own bottom. What you do against the Most High, you're responsible for that. Right? You want to know how to please the Creator? Follow the teachings of the Messiah. Never abandon common sense. All right? But the Nazarenes in the same, we was against the blood sacrifices and blood for atonement. We was against all that. Still are. And matter of fact, the Bible tell you in Hebrews 10 and 26, if you sinned willfully after you receive the knowledge of the truth, there ain't no more sacrifice for your sins anyway. So if any of y'all have sinned since you've been in the knowledge of being an Israelite, if you've sinned willfully since you've been in the knowledge of being an Israelite, then according to the Bible, Hebrews 10 and 26, there ain't no more sacrifice for your sins anyway. You are responsible for what you do against the Most High. Every tub got to sit on his own bottom. And he know if you sincere, right? Because you'll show it through your actions. All right. The teaching that one has only to believe that God or the unbegotten sent his only begotten son to die in a grotesque and horrid blood sacrifice as a ransom of the sins of the world, and all transgressions past, present, and future are forgiven unto salvation, life eternal, is literally the opposite to what history tells us the Nazarenes believed. How could this be possible? Ooh-wee. Ooh-wee. Y'all getting some understanding? Give me an 8 up in the chat. No? I'm going to read that again. The teaching that one has, trip off this, the teaching that one has only to believe that it says God, we're going to say the Most High. The Most High sent his only begotten son to die in a grotesque and horrible blood sacrifice as a ransom for the sins of the world, and all transgressions, past, present, and future, are forgiven unto salvation, in parentheses, life eternal, is literally the opposite. Is literally the opposite to what history tells us the Nazarenes believed. How could this be possible? We cooking now, ain't we? We cooking now. Let's get it done. Let's get it done. One might consider going back in the time machine and asking the Roman Empire sometime between the sacking of Jerusalem in 70 AD and the start of the infamous Council of Nicaea in 325 AD. The Romans themselves say that Constantine the Great, at the behest of God. Look at this, y'all. Check it this. Look at this. Look at this. The Romans themselves say that Constantine the Great, at the behest of God, ordained a clique of priests and scribes. Now go to them scribes. These were not Israelite scribes. Huh? These were not Israelite scribes. And the literature wasn't in Hebrew. You see that? Look at this. It says the Roman themselves say that Constantine the Great, at the behest of God, ordained a clique of priests and scribes to decide for all humanity for all time, or so they thought, out of a pile of existing manuscripts and scrolls of the period, what would be called scripture and what will be called heresy, i.e., contrary to the teaching of the Roman church. That's what you got. That's what you got. That's why you got to know how to navigate, man. You don't be out here just believing. You don't look. Do you know the game that's being played out here? You don't be out here gullible, believing everything hook, line, and sinker. Question it. Try the spirit. If it don't line up with common sense, if it don't line up with nature, if it don't line up with the character of the Most High, you got to question that. You got to question that and move around with caution. But notice, they deciding what scripture out of existing records already from surrounding nations. Not to mention the Roman Empire. That's not an Israelite empire. And even if it was, if they was some wicked Israelites under the inspiration of the false gods and deities, what does that matter? That they was black folk. All praise to the Most High. Game of Visions. Bless up, you know what I mean? Look at my sister Seraphina. Now look at this, y'all. Seraphina, I believe she was an ex-chaplain. She's in the military. Seraphina, Bethel, Israel. Now trip off this. This is one of my older sisters, right? She say, outstanding class. I had forgotten this. 100K for seminary. You are 100% on point. All praise to the Most High. Currently, there are 325 Christian denominations still debating what you are breaking down. Todah Rabbah. All praises to the Most High. Yes, you know, most Israelites believe your little brother lost the light or something. I'm like, nah, I didn't gain more light. I don't know what y'all talking about. I feel marvelous. All right, but notice what they doing, y'all. Like, they are the ones deciding what's canon and what's heresy. You see? And if anybody know what we're talking about, it would be my sister, our sister Seraphina, that's in the chat right now. She spent $100,000 for seminary school, going to seminary. What you mean? Was an ordained chaplain. What you mean? Oh, okay. She's saying, yeah, what you talking about, that's correct. So all praises to the Most High. You did. We just present the information because we don't want our people to be looking stupid and silly out here. Ain't nothing worse than to be looking like you an idiot. You think the whole time you doing something right. Boy, I heard looking short. Man, come on, man. Now watch this. It says right here. I'm going to go back up a little bit. It said the Romans themselves say that Constantine the Great, at the behest of God, ordained a clique of priests and scribes. Now, why are the scribes there, y'all? Because the scribes got to write this stuff out. They got to amalgamate. They got to agree on what's going to be combined or amalgamated, and then the scribes got to write. So when Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John did not write the Gospels, what is you talking about? What you got is a byproduct of the Council of Nicaea. That's what you have. Look at this. To decide for all humanity for all time, or so they thought, out of a pile of existing manuscripts. This is how they got the New Testament together. A pile of existing manuscripts and scrolls of that period. Of the period of the 4th century. What would be called scripture, i.e. official canon, and what would be called heresy, i.e. contrary to the teaching of the Roman church. To think they stopped there would be naive. Yeah, of course it would be. Of course, it would be naive to think all of a sudden they just, turn the switch off in 325. They made their little adjustments, and then today, I mean, they made 5 mistakes, Mally. That's it, 5 mistakes. They put East in the Bible in the King James. That's one, and they may have, said he in Jeremiah 23 and she in Jeremiah 33, talking about the Most High. That's 2. It's just 5 mistakes. I haven't heard it all. Look at this. To think that they stopped at editing, to think that there ain't been scribes, to think that there ain't been redactions and additions and things put in there and amalgamated to fit the agenda of whoever is ruling, to think that that stopped in 325 AD would be not just naive, be plumb dumb. All right? Look at this. They proceeded over the next 200 years to add and delete at will. They proceeded over the next 200 years to add and delete at will, in spite of what the foreboding epitaph at the end of Revelation says, which curiously wasn't added until sometime later. There it is again. The epitaph at the end of Revelation. You know, the one that says, what if you add to or take away, the Most High gonna add to you the plagues written in this book. And if you take away, the Most High gonna take away your name out the book of life. All right. But y'all, that wasn't even a part of the original New Testament. It was added to the New Testament. First, it was the shepherd of hermits. Now look at this. Look at this. The unfortunate culmination of all this came in 527 AD. Emperor Justinian's first official edict concerning the church was to outlaw all teachings considered to be departures from official church canon. So Justinian was one of your first persecutors. You see that? Justinian. Now, if you wasn't rocking with what the church ordained, church doctrine, you was outlawed as a heretic and condemned. So this is where the Nazarene literature starts getting condemned. You did? The unfortunate culmination. Oh, I read that already right there. It says right here. In particular, anything considered to be of a heathen persuasion, i.e. Buddhist, Hindu, or anything Eastern, was forbidden. The impact of this was that any individual or group caught teaching such things as the teachings of cause and effect, i.e. karma. But that's in the Bible. You got to reap what you sow. You got to harvest what you plant. That's universal. That's a law of the Creator. All right, the impact of this was that any individual or group caught teaching such things as the teachings of cause and effect, or karma, the immortality of the soul. That's true. The immortality of the soul, in parentheses, reincarnation. Me, myself, I don't believe in reincarnation, but I do believe our souls and spirits are immortal. All right. Look at this, though. Vegetarianism, or any related forms of asceticism, compassionate treatment of animals, and most importantly of all, anti-slavery, could be arrested and horrifically executed. Do y'all hear this? And that's what all we teach, minus the reincarnation. You naturally, that's a natural cycle of the Creator, the Most High. Whatever you put out, you get back. So cause and effect is real. What goes up must come down. That's real. The immortality of the soul is real. I mean, my perspective on reincarnation ain't the same as whoever's, but I do believe the spirit is immortal. Absolutely. Vegetarianism, or plant-based, we teach that. Compassionate treatment of animals, we teach that. And most importantly of all, anti-slavery. Yeah, we against bondage and slavery. And if we was teaching that during Justinian's edict, we could have been arrested and horrifically executed. Horrifically executed. Look at that. Look at that now. Wow. Slavery was not only legal. Look at this, y'all. Slavery was not only legal. Dang. Slavery was not only legal, it says, upon Justinian's arrival, the manual for proper treatment and pricing was promptly upgraded. As history bears out, many from sects such as the Apollonarians and the Eutychians, and most specifically the Nestorians, all of whom had ties to one form or another of neo-Gnosticism, and who taught or practiced some or all of the previously listed condemnations, were mercilessly pursued and persecuted under Justinian's regime. So it wasn't just the Nazarene sect that taught, you understand, what we just talked about. You know what I mean? It was other sects I heard that taught the same thing. And guess what? You know what I mean? And guess what? If you was taught like, if that what you was teaching, he was hunted down and destroyed. So this is Christianity establishing itself by the sword. You know what I mean? Establishing itself by the sword. And I will say this, wait till y'all read what went down in the heavens. You know what I mean? The whole council of Nicaea breakdown in the wasp. Cold. Like what went down, because Constantine was under the vibration and inspiration of a false god. You know what I mean? Because remember, history says he saw a cross and this sign you're going to conquer and all that. Yeah. But wait till y'all read the connection in the Owaspy about that. Cold how that all went down. I was like, dang. It did. But that's something for y'all to, you know, study and meditate on. But watch this right here. It says right here, our next historical quote comes from the highly esteemed Clement of Alexandria. Look at this. As also it stands written in the Gospel of the Hebrews, or the Gospel of the Nazarenes, he that seeks will not rest till he finds. And he that has found shall marvel. And he that has marveled shall reign. And he that has reigned shall rest. This quote from Clement, though somewhat abbreviated, can be quoted or be found as early as Plato, and in the Gnostic Gospel of Thomas as well. It can also be found twice in the Gospel of the Nazarenes. Here are both quotations in their entirety, starting with chapter 27, verse 4, the Sermon on the Mount, part 3. Ask and it shall be given you. Seek and you shall find. Knock and it shall be open to you. For everyone that asks receives, and he that seeks will not rest until he finds. And he that has found shall marvel. And he that has marveled shall reign. And he that has reigned shall rest. And trip about this, y'all. Look at the bottom down there. Y'all need to go get this book too. Codex Justinius, 10 pieces of gold for an ordinary male or female slave under 10 years. So Justinian, all them wasn't just for slavery. Like he came and brought the blueprint to the slavery. He was the Willie Lynch of his day. He was the Willie Lynch in his day. Dig? YAH'KI, God's Book of Escrow. And God's Book of Escrow, man, it's cold. Going back by like go back to like chapters 42 on in to like do chapters 44 to like 47, and you'll see it. And then go back to like chapter 40 and then read through. It did, because it going to what was going on with Islam too. Cold. Like that shit. Like I ain't never tripped off what had to be happening in the heavens for Constantine to get the inspiration and then take over. You understand? Christianity took over the whole known world. And if it's all based off the worship of a false god, then that ain't the Most High. So it was beautiful to see what went down in the spirit to influence Constantine and, you know, the founders of Islam and all that too. It was tight. I mean, I must say, fascinating stuff. All right. So he brought the Willie Lynch. Justinian was the Willie Lynch of his day. If y'all understand what I'm saying, give me a 4 up in the chat. Bless up. You know what I mean? So he brought the blueprint, 10 pieces of gold for an ordinary male or female slave under 10 years, 20 for 20, 20 for slaves over 10, 30 for such as understood a trade, 50 for notaries and scribes, 60 for physicians and midwives, eunuchs, those unfortunate enough to be so designated having had their testicles removed at puberty or thereabouts, range to 70 pieces. This is the manual. Emperor Justinian was Willie Lynch before Willie Lynch. And if you was caught teaching how we taught and believe right now, you was hunted down and destroyed. See, they were not under the vibration of the Creator. That's what the brothers been trying to get everybody to see lately. If Christianity is false, then the God of Christianity is false. That means the inspiration behind Christianity is false. You see that? I mean, you got to question the literature that was produced with it as well. That's it. All right. Get ready to pop a blood vessel. You know why? Because men have made a book their creator. That's the problem. We almost done for this episode. We're going to come back a few more days and get some more stuff done. But y'all, what we talking about is very, very historical. And when y'all see my stuff highlighted, this is out of my book. I did the research before I brought it out. You know what I mean? That's my writing. That's me underlining stuff and all that. So I ain't just giving you, a PDF. I'm giving you what's out my actual book. Because we studied it before we brought it out. That was the thing. I was trying to tell everybody, like, look, calm down. You're going to hurt yourself. You know what I mean? White man wrote, and we get to the point to where, look, the hatred for the truth blinds you so much, you thinking that editors are authors. You think that a compiler is an author. You see what I'm saying? That's how dark your mind becomes when hatred floods it, because you can't even judge right. Like, you can't even see clear enough to say, no, those ain't the authors, those are the editors. You ain't even you're not even thinking. You see that? Now watch this. King Buddha, Yahudah be in the building, bless up. Now look at this. And later in chapter 90, verse 9, talking about the gospel of the Nazarenes. What is truth? Be faithful. Now look at this. Look at this. Be faithful to the light you have till a higher light is given to you. Now, is the Messiah straight telling you, hold on to what you have until something higher comes? And if it ain't a higher light, then surely the light that you have outshines that. He telling you to hold on to what you have, where you head on your spiritual journey and progression and all that. Hold on to that till something higher comes. Be faithful to the light you have till a higher light is given to you. Seek more light and you shall have it abundantly, for he that seeks will not rest until he finds. And he that has found shall marvel, and he that has marveled shall reign, and he that has reigned shall rest. Returning now look at this, y'all. Returning now to Papias in 110 AD, we read, now Papias was John the Apostle's disciple, who lived during the 1st and 2nd century Common Era. His writings are still out here. Now look at this. This is what he's writing. The days approach when vines will grow, each having 10,000 branches. I actually got this writing on my bookshelf. The days approach when vines will grow, each having 10,000 branches, and in each branch 10,000 twigs, and in each twig 10,000 shoots, and in every shoot 10,000 grapes, and every grape when pressed will give 5 and 20 measures of wine. Straight up. This quote from Papias' commentary on the Aramaic original, Matthew, is found word for word in the Gospel of the Nazarenes, chapter 32, verse 11. It's found word for word. So where we at now? What you mean we ain't historical and we done lost the light and all that? No, we have been commanded to hold on to the light we have till a higher light comes. It's always about progression, upward and outward, man. That's all this thing is about. And it's not about bondage. No brothers, sisters should feel as if they're in bondage. To get close to your creator, you got to be in bondage. Stop it, man. That don't even make sense. It don't even make sense. It is interesting. It is interesting to pay particular attention to the introduction to the next quote from St. Jerome, where he again verifies the source and lineage of the later translations. In the gospel which the Nazarenes and Ebionites used. Look at this. Now, y'all know Jerome is the one who wrote the Latin Vulgate in the 400s, the 5th century. He lived during the 4th and 5th centuries. Jerome did. He produced the Latin Vulgate. Codex Sinaiticus. And Jerome. Right? Now, look what he's saying. He, off his own lips, 1,600 years ago, in the gospel which the Nazarenes and the Ebionites used, which we have recently translated out of Hebrew into Greek. We got Jerome saying that the Nazarenes spoke Hebrew. Not only spoke it, read it. And our gospels were in Hebrew or Aramaic. Aramaic is a sister language to the Hebrew. It's all good. You know what I mean? Which we have recently translated out of Hebrew into Greek, and which is called by most people the authentic gospel of Matthew. This is Jerome admitting this. That means that the New Testament that Jerome is reading is not the original authentic one. That's found amongst the Nazarenes and the Ebionites. Look at this. Look at this. The man who had the withered hand is described as a mason who pleaded for help in the following words. I was a mason and earned my livelihood with my hands. I beseech thee, Yahshua, restore to me my health, that I may not with ignominy have to beg for my bread. And that's Jerome's commentary on what's in the gospel of the Nazarenes. Wow. Wow. And y'all, you gonna know it's real for real when you actually go order all these books and start underlining all these quotes. You're gonna be like, dang, that's crazy. That's literally in history. That's literally in history. Wow. Let's go to the next one. We almost done for the day. We're gonna come back and finish it. All right. The Gospel of the Nazarenes prologue, historical context. In chapter 48, verse 10, the Gospel of the Nazarenes, we read, and when he was departed from there, he went to their temple. And behold, there was a man who had his hand withered, who said, I was a mason and earned my livelihood with my hands. I beseech thee, Yahshua, to restore to me my health, that I may not with ignominy have to beg for my bread. And before Yahshua could answer, the Pharisees asked him, saying, is it lawful to heal on the Shabbat? This then said they, that they might entrap him. Quoting from the Gospel of the Nazarenes, chapter 69, 7-9. And Shalom came to him and asked him, saying, Yahshua, how long shall death hold sway? And he answered, so long as men inflict burdens and women bring forth. For this purpose I am come to end the works of the heedless. And Shalom said to him, then I have done well in not bringing forth. Yahshua then said, eat of every pasture which is good, but of that which has the bitterness of death eat not. And when Shalom asked when those things of which he inquired should be known, Yahshua said, when you should tread upon the vesture of shame and rise above desire. Oof. When you shall tread upon the vesture of shame and rise above desire, when the two shall be one, and the male with the female shall be neither male nor female. The preceding excerpt, although presented in fragmented form for purposes of commentary, is acknowledged nearly word for word by Clement of Alexandria in what he calls the Gospel of the Egyptians. A very curious comment is made by Clement in the text. Let's get to it. See, we dancing 20 centuries ago. We dancing 20 centuries ago for anybody claiming we ain't talking about nothing historical. What is you talking about? This literature is a threat to the Israelite, the main faction of the Hebrew Israelite isms, or the Israelite nation. He's challenging you. Mashiach came bearing the light of the Creator. He wasn't dealing with he didn't come teaching in accord with the written Torah. No, what he was talking about was a higher instruction, a higher Torah given to him from his father. What our people were under bondage to was the written Torah produced by various scribes coming out of Babylon. Right? And even if you say, well, that's the Torah Ezra produced in second Ezra and the Apocrypha. Well, that's supposed to be 204 books of the Torah. Wait a minute. You ain't even got them. Well, even if he hid 70 books and revealed the rest, that's 134 books of Torah. They ain't even talking about the prophets. We just talking about the Torah. And your Torah is 5 books. It ain't 134. You ain't got what Ezra's, according to the Apocrypha, produced. I know. It get real. Now, in the first place, we have not this message in the 4 Gospels that have been handed down to us, but in the Gospel of the Egyptians. And as has already been demonstrated above, handed down in the Gospel of the Nazarenes as well. For the next quote, we return to Epiphanius in his Hebrew or Aramaic Matthew. Epiphanius is 5th century. Epiphanes is 1600 years ago. Look at this. Where will you have us prepare the Passover? Yahshua answer to that is, do I desire at the Passover to eat flesh with you? Look at this. Messiah was not a carnivore, man. Him and his disciples were plant-based. No flesh at Passover. In the Gospel of the Nazarenes, Yahshua rebukes even the slightest hint of flesh consumption at the Passover, or at any other time for that matter. Judas was not fully initiated. Look at this. Then Judas, the newest member who had not yet been fully initiated in the mysteries, asked, where will you have us prepare the Pesach? And Yahshua answered, what I desire with desire at this Passover, to eat flesh with you, before I am to institute the memorial of my oblation for the service and salvation of all. For behold, the hour approaches when the Son of Man shall be betrayed into the hands of traitors. It is, of course, no accident that Yahshua follows his rebuke of Judas' question with the preceding statement, obviously insinuating it would be Judas who would carry out the act of betrayal. And after testing Yahshua further concerning the Passover, that he might ensnare him in the eyes of the Sanhedrin, that's the Supreme Court, concerning the Passover law, Yahshua repeats what ultimately becomes his final, look at this, his final self. Hold on. All right. His final self-incriminating statement that seals both his fate and, for that matter, the fate of the entire Nazarene movement, along with anyone else considered a sympathizer. Verily I say unto you, sure about this, y'all. This statement right here is what got the Messiah betrayed. This right here, because he refused to eat the Passover lamb. Look at this. Verily I say unto you, for this end have I come into the world, that I may put away all blood offerings. Look at this, y'all. That I may put away all blood offerings and the eating of the flesh of the beasts and the birds that are slain by men. There it is. And this last quote from chapter 75 of the Nazarene Gospel, the last Paschal Supper, verse 9. We find one more what is that? Poignant example of the obvious differences between Nazarene and post-Nicene philosophy and beliefs. And returning to St. Jerome, the next quote we find is no less controversial. Again, as in earlier passages, it is important that the reader take heed to Jerome's introductory comments. In the Gospel according to the Hebrews, which the Nazarenes all want to read, which was recently translated into Greek and Latin, which Origen frequently uses. That's another church father. They actually used it. It just wasn't agreed to be in the authorized New Testament, but they knew, look, this is the original way. Look at this. Look at this. James has sworn, and this is the Messiah's biological brother, James, YHWH'S. Look at this. James has sworn that he would not eat bread from that hour. And y'all, this is Jerome quoting about, now this is Origen quoting about James. Origen, y'all, is 3rd, 4th century. James lived during the 1st century. Now look at the oral understanding that was going on about the Nazarenes. And remember, James was the top apostle left in charge of the Messiah's movement. Yaakov had sworn that he would not eat bread from that hour in which he had drunk the cup of the master. And so he said he wasn't going to eat it all from Passover all the way up until he saw him again. Now look at it. Yaakov had sworn that he would not eat bread from that hour in which he had drunk the cup of the master, until he should see him risen from among them that sleep. And shortly thereafter, the master said, bring a table and bread. And immediately it is added. He took the bread and blessed it and brake it and gave it to YHWH'S, his brother, y'all, and said to him, my brother, YAH'KI, eat thy bread, for the Son of Man is risen from among them that sleep. And that right there is at the Sea of Galilee. You see? But in John 21 in the Bible, got him eating some fish after he resurrected at the Sea of Galilee. Nah, it was fruit It was dried fruit and bread in the gospel of the Nazarenes. All right. All praise. Y'all give some understanding. All praises. And here as it appears word for word in the gospel of the Nazarenes, chapter 984. Here to go. Now, James has sworn that he would not eat bread from the hour in which he had drunk the cup of the master until he should. Oh, let's get on back. That's word. We just working. That's it. We just working. Yo. All these ancient references. How do anybody say there's no historicity? There's no history to back up what we talking about, man. It's all the history. I've been calling for the fade and the smoke all year. I even made a video and called me and out by name. Whoever wanted can get it. What's up? Nah, men just make their videos and smell their own breath and their own platform, but they won't say, all right, brother, set that up and get it done. That's why I respect these brothers that, you know, got my Oxila and my Ben, Yakanan, Dawid, YAHKI. I respect them brothers. They came to the platform. You did. We got my brother Cosman Cal and my brother Benadad Ben Yehud. I respect them brothers, man. These brothers is willing to come in front of everybody and put it on the table and let's get it. You know what I mean? I respect that. I respect it. I don't respect being a coward. You understand? Because if you anything about what you believe, then you should be willing to go out on your sword anyway. All right. So basically right here, James is saying the same thing that Jerome said he said in the gospel of the Nazarenes, right? St. Jerome commentary on what he calls the gospel according to the Hebrews also includes a statement that there is counted among the most grievous of offenses he that has grieved the spirit of his brother. A similar statement is found in chapter 94, the gospel of the Nazarenes, verse 1. For those who believe and obey the law, it is a most grievous offense to mourn those passing from this incarnation. Mourn not, therefore, nor weep for them that have left you, but rather rejoice for their entrance into life. Absolutely. Absolutely. Nazarenes looked at death as the gateway to life, man. Life is just beginning now. It's the most grievous offense to be over here crying. I mean, of course you're going to be sad. Of course you're going to be sad. But I'm telling you, don't let that consume you. You understand? It's just starting. All right, they just starting their journey. That's what's up. Now look at this. For our last quote, we move forward in history slightly more than a millennium to bring in a 17th century historian, Sedalia Scottus, who wrote in 1660. For thus the gospel, which is, so y'all, we done went from the first century up to, so we done went from the first century up to the 17th century so far. So that's 1600 years of Nazarene testimony, Essene testimony, Ebionite testimony. What you mean we ain't connected the dots? This is beyond historical. You understand? This is beyond historical. And we've been doing it with my game of vision. Yeah, man, Side, I done reached out to Side Netter before. It's hard to get in contact with him. You understand? And you know, the whole thing about eating meats offered to idols. Because I've been calling everybody out on that. What's up? If you don't know what meats offered to idols are, then how you know you're not eating flesh that's been offered to an idol? And how are you so against what we saying if you don't know what it is? You see what I'm saying? So yeah, man, I'm always down to present the information. But it's kind of hard to get in contact with. You know, there's a lot of cats out there, man. But look at it. Our last quote, we move forward in history slightly more than a millennium, right? For thus the gospel, which is entitled, according to the Hebrews, reports, when Joseph looked out with his eyes, he saw a crowd of pilgrims who were coming in company to the cave. And he said, I will arise and go out to meet them. So this means in 1660, Sedalia Scottus knew about the gospel of the Nazarenes. He knew about not only by name, but was in it. All right. He saw a crowd of pilgrims who were coming in company to the cave, and he said, I will arise and go out to meet them. And when Joseph went out, he said to Simon, it seems to me as if those coming were soothsayers. For lo, every moment they look up to heaven and confer one with another. But they seem also to be strangers, for their appearance differs from ours. For their dress is very rich, their complexion is quite dark. They have caps on their heads. Sound like the Magi. Sound like the Magi coming from Babylon. All right. Look at this. Their garments seem to be silky, and they have breeches on their legs. And lo, they have halted and are looking at me. Lo, they have again set themselves in motion and are coming here. From these words, it is clear that not merely 3 men, but a crowd of pilgrims came to the master. Even if, according to some of the foremost leaders of this crowd, were named with the definite names Melchizedek, Caspar, and Fades or Da. Sedelius Scotus commentary on the Gospel of the Nazarenes. Now look at this, y'all. If nothing else, what this proves is that as late as the mid-17th century, an Aramaic/Hebrew original or some derivative thereof was still in existence. Absolutely. Absolutely. More importantly, the quote from Scotus can be found in chapter 5, verse 9 through 10 of the Gospel of the Nazarenes, more or less word for word. Absolutely. Look at that. So look what I wrote down. We're going to end it right here for the day. This is what I wrote down. All right. It says right here. It says right here, church fathers, anti-Nicaea, meaning before the Council of Nicaea, and post-Nicaea or pro-Nicaea, church fathers and scholars and historians, from who? Papias. Y'all, Papias lived from 60 AD to 140 AD. All right. So this is even longer. All right. From Papias to Sedelius Scotus. Disciples. Papias is a disciple or was a disciple of John the Baptist. Sedelius Scotus is a 17th century historian. All mention, look at this, all mention the Gospel of the Nazarenes by as many different titles. Gospel of the Hebrews, Ebionites, or the authentic Hebrew version of Matthew. Y'all, what you mean we not historical? If we on the record of a man that lived during the 1st century all the way up to a historian who lived in the 17th century, that's 1,600 years back to back. That's 1,600 years of testimony of Nazarene, Essene literature and the historicity of it. You see that? So one thing that can't be said around here is, you know what I mean, we ain't did our research and what we bringing out ain't historical. Nah, that's a lie. And we got more. I'm gonna pick back up on the next slide, and then we actually gonna get into some of them fathers too, because I got all their works. We're gonna get into them too. All right, hold on for 1 second. Let me stop sharing my screen. We gonna get it. Oh yeah, we gonna get it. All praises, glory, and honor to the Most High. You dig? So yeah, y'all brothers and sisters, just make sure y'all do them studies. You know, get your take your notes, your virtual notes, or whatever you got to do or whatever. But we giving y'all everything that we study, everything. You understand? The person, the place, the time period, even the book they quoting out of. All right. So let me know if y'all got some understanding today about the historicity or the historical validity of the Nazarene and Essene sect and literature. If y'all got some understanding today, give me a Yahoo up in the chat. We came outside fully prepared. And all that stuff you see underlined again, y'all, that's from my book from last year. You know what I mean? Last year. So we just gonna slowly bring everything else back out. You know what I mean? Hey, Game of Visions. They all them know, because they all done had like different videos about us. So they all know but don't nobody want to like challenge it. I mean, they'll probably let me come on to, present some stuff, which I'm cool with that too. You dig? But they already like, bro, a lot of people ain't, about that sword like you think. A lot of people, they not. All right, you got some understanding. All right, y'all. But look, keep us all in prayer. We pray for us as we continue to pray for y'all. Thank y'all for y'all prayers and y'all support. Believe that, know that. You understand? And y'all willing, we right back up in a few. Probably not tomorrow, the next day. We're gonna continue the history. We'll bring the history out. You understand? Y'all already know any prayer requests or whatever. Y'all know how to get in touch with the big homie NehemiYAH. Then he sent out a mass text and we, you know, put our focus and righteous intention on whatever it is, and guess what? Things get to moving. So all praises. We definitely are spiritual, definitely high vibrational frequency. You know what I mean? Monique Ann, hallelujah, all praises. That's what's up. Mikael the Battle Axe, Dino in the building. Bless her. All praises. Tay Israel. I see y'all. Stephanie Randall, my beloved sister. Bless her. Iris Stevens in the building. Greg Kwalume. Bless her. Shia, my dirty South brethren. Bless up. Yael, Imai Robbie Dobson. Southern Yehudah. Y'all in the building. Bless up, King. Fluoride in the building. Game of Vision. That's right. Joseph Evans. I'm glad everybody getting some understanding. What we gonna do, y'all, is slowly go back over all the stuff we brought out last year. You know what I mean? Because I'm pretty sure it's a gang of people like, man, I don't know if it's historical. And we got it. We got you. And the beautiful thing about it, it's already done. All we gotta do is go and just click on it. It's already done. So love y'all indeed and in truth. All praise to the Most High. Follow them teachings of the Messiah. You understand? Because teachings of the Messiah is the Torah of the Most High. Yeah, his teachings are superior than the written Torah that you have right now. I said it, I'm standing on it. All praise to the Most High. Love all y'all indeed and in truth. Bless up.